debated whether we were going to have everyone give out, like, do an introduction, but in the, try to honor your time. That would take a few minutes. So we're just going to, what we did, the spin the dots activity was just to kind of get a pulse for who's in our room. So right now we're pretty evenly divided between elementary and secondary folks. We have 13 elementary, 9 secondary. We have 3 SPED teachers in the building right now, and 1 specialist, and 1 other. And I'm very curious, what is the other?
An administrator.
An administrator? Boom, there we go. So we have 9 folks who are 10 years of teaching experience or less. And then we have 14 in the 10 to or 11 to 25. And then we have 4 who are 26 and above. So a wide range of teaching experience, a wide range of levels that we're teaching. So a lot of different expertise that we're bringing to the room right now that I can't wait to learn more about. So.
That's not what I want. Okay, what did I do? Pushed the wrong button. Thank you. And it's the yellow, middle yellow one? Oh, there you go. You got it.
All right.
Okay. Well, before we begin, I just want to just set the purpose behind why we're here tonight. Senate Bill 83 said that our cooperating teachers need to go through a training. And it used to be in the past that that training was meet with the university supervisor, go over what the program expectations were, answer questions you might have, boom, you went through the training. Well, now they want more. And so, which is, is a good thing. Let's really give some additional training for this and think about what it is that would be helpful tools as you are involved in this mentoring of these pre-service teachers. And so that's what we've attempted to put together here. Of course, if we were really thinking about all the things that would be important to know about, many of those things you already have, but if you were trying to guess and put those together, we'd be here for several days. And so we really tried to say, okay, what can we put together in 2.5 hours? Again, trying to think of your time that would be helpful to possibly know, or questions that might come up, or strategies that you could use in this working with our candidates. So, all right. And so that's what we're going to be doing here today. What we'd like you to start with, and a lot of what we're going to be doing today is kind of some elbow partner work as well as individual thought time and reflection upon, and then getting a chance to discuss that with people close to you. So, to start with, we'd like you to think about a positive mentor. Somebody that mentored you in some capacity and really helped you along that journey that you are now on. What was the context? What was it that they were helping mentor you in? And then what attributes made them effective? And usually if they were effective, that helped you and made you more effective as well. So what we'd like you to do is, if you could, and we'll have probably a few other times where we're going to ask you to reflect. And so if you've got a pen or pencil, you've got a packet when you came in, find the back of one of those sheets, or I think there is maybe a sheet in there that you can add a little bit to. Some of you may even have your own journal and you want to jot this down. But yes, the second page, there's a little box there that you can jot some things down in. And so we'd like you to kind of think about those and write down, just spend a minute or two here on write down some of those ideas about that mentor, about what made them effective, what was it that they helped you with. Two brave people that would like to share something they heard. An attribute to Tillery. Two brave people. Who's going to be the first one? Oh, she beat you. Right here. All right.
So some of the attributes that I really admired in my mentor teacher in my last term of student teaching was just kind of seeing her also model like how to build relationships with kids too, and that's a huge advantage. And then she did a really great job like modeling organization and modeling like what to prioritize for me, like what to try to get done at school versus what to take home and try to get done.
Juggling that personal life as well.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And you had one over here?
Yeah.
Sarah? Well, you could share one that you heard as well.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I thought Diane was really interesting when she said that her teacher, her
Mentor teacher.
treated her as a colleague from the start. Didn't treat her as an assistant, but treated her as a colleague, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah. And actually, that's one of the reasons why we started using, the term teacher candidate now, is to try and focus on that as they are a teacher as well in the room, and to work on that more of a colleague rather than this person that's coming in here just to try and learn. So, or a student teacher. The next sheet, let's see if I can get this to work. Oh, hey, there it is. Okay. That next sheet here lists several attributes of effective mentors. And I think as you begin to look at that, you will probably see maybe some of the exact same things that you already stated yourself or that you heard somebody else say. Maybe it's roughly the same, and then there might be a few things on there that it's like, oh, we didn't touch on that, but yeah, that's a good one too. Right? Here's what I'd like you to take just a minute or two to do. As you read over that, and you talk about the dispositions of effective mentors, how they're acting, the knowledge base of what they have, the skills that they possess. You are now mentors yourself. And some of you have done this many times. Some of you in this room, this is your first attempt at taking on a student teacher. All right? As you read over that, I want you to be blatantly honest with yourself. You're not going to have to share this out. But what are those areas that you could put maybe a star by, or actually they're already stars, so maybe a circlet or mark it some way. It's like, you know what? I think I do a pretty good job of that. I think that's something that, I am blessed with that skill. That is something that just comes easily for me. But I think also as you read over that, you're going to probably say, this one is a little more difficult for me. This is one that maybe I might have to work at, especially in my interactions with this pre-service teacher. All right? So go through that list just on your own, and kind of and mark those that you think, okay, that one I'm doing pretty well. This one, not so much. Go ahead and take a moment or two to do that, please.
Okay, I can see some side conversations starting. So these me to believe people have reflected enough. All right. So, so what we want to do? Well, did you want them to do this part or no?
I think I saw some people already doing this a little bit.
Yeah.
It's always interesting for me as I look at something like this, a list like this, it's like to think, oh, I hadn't really thought about that one. That's a good one too. I need to remember that. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Next part, an important piece of having a teacher candidate in your classroom. And just being a teacher, and I know everyone in this room already knows this, but a huge piece of building successful individuals coming out of our classrooms is that trust and the relationship that we build with those students or those individuals. So thinking about your teacher candidate, think about ways that you're building trust with him or her. One way that I try to build trust with people, I truly feel like I am like a relationship person. I take certain steps to try to build relationships with everybody that I know. Part of that, even against the principal that I work with, against his wishes, I still rock the Cubs lanyard, right? He's not a huge fan of that, but I rock the Cubs lanyard, even though they got throttled last night in 14 innings. I wear that because it sparks conversations. I walk around in lunch duty, kids see that, they're like, oh, you're a Cubs fan. And that helps start conversations where they may not otherwise, right? I've got a little bit of flair on my lanyard. People want to know what that's all about. It sparks conversations. That gets me an in to talk to people, right? And then that relationship can just grow from there. So that's just part of me and what I do. So the other part is that I try to be completely transparent and honest when I'm not putting someone else at jeopardy. So in honor of that, with all of you, I'm going to be completely transparent and honest and let you know that right now I may not be like 100% present because of some events that happened at school for me today, which has given me a throbbing headache and just has my ADD kicking in overdrive right now, okay? But, so you're gonna hear a lot of ums and maybe some pauses while I collect my thoughts, but that's where I'm at and I wanna give you my best. So, when I'm pausing, that's me making sure I'm not saying something really regretful, which has been known to happen from time to time. So, anyway, going back to relationships, what do we need to know about that person that we're working with, right? What do they need to know about us? But beyond that, what are the things that we're doing as their mentor teacher, their cooperating teacher, to really put them in a position to be vulnerable and open up, right? Like how are we getting them to make the most out of that time that we have with them? For me as a student teacher, a teacher candidate, I had three experiences student teaching. And my first one was not great because that teacher that I worked with, like, she would just, what do you want to do? What do you mean? What do you want to teach today? I don't know, like, I'm kind of still learning. Well, why don't you try this? And she would just kind of throw me into the fire with no guidance. And then when I did it, there would be very, very little feedback, right? So to me, that didn't help build trust. I just kind of felt like I was in experimental phase and I wasn't really growing as a practitioner. I was just kind of like there and winging it. And then when my advisor from my program would come, then she gave me a little bit more feedback. So I didn't find that to be a super successful time in my student teaching or my graduate program. The other people that I worked with were awesome, right? So you have a whole list. There's a, I think it's in the slide. So you have that, that getting to know you planning tool. You know, think about some of those things that you're going through with your teacher candidate. Are you guys establishing goals together? Have you talked about the goals for the teacher that you're working with, the teacher candidate? What are your goals this year as a teacher, an experienced teacher? And how does that relate to what you can teach that person, right? What are your goals? Do you have like your student learning growth goals? How does that teacher candidate play into those? And then how does that help them as they're moving into their own career and they're starting to think about those things? We're going to talk about culturally relevant teaching here in a minute, but like a big thing for me was I didn't really learn the school culture because my cooperating teacher never really expressed to me that it was expected of me to attend things like staff meetings and like what you do during lunch. She would always just be like, hey, it's lunchtime, peace out. And then kind of like disappear for a while. And I'd be like, so I live like down the road, can I go home? Like, what do I do? And I got nothing. So I usually just sat in the classroom and did whatever. I know. Kind of felt like, nobody likes me, everybody hates me, I guess I'll eat worms. I bet I didn't do that. All right, so the getting to know you tool. When I was a mentor teacher, what I would do at the beginning of the year for like the 25 to 30 teachers that I was supporting, I sent out a little kind of like get to know you tool for them, right? Had a ton of questions, their favorite beverage that was school appropriate, their favorite guilty treat, like talked about their family, and they were able to fill that out to whatever completeness they were comfortable with. But then that gave me things to connect with them with when I was visiting their class. Or if I knew they had a tough day, I would, whatever that guilty treat was or that drink was, I might show up and like, hey, sorry you had a rough day yesterday here. Or like, why don't you take 10, I'll take your class for a few, you need to take care of you, right? And I think that came up in that last share out was like a teacher is modeling self-care, and I'm the worst at that. I talk about it a lot and like the culture of care stuff that I do, but I'm terrible at it, and I need to be better at modeling that, both for my family and for the people that I'm supporting. So take a look at that tool when you have time. Like, what are some things you can pull from there if you haven't already done it? I know we're already a month into the game, right? And so you and your teacher candidate may have had a lot of time. Some people maybe just have started. I don't know, like when I went to Portland State, we didn't get placed in our program or classrooms until like middle of September. So we weren't always there day one. But if there are things that you haven't done yet, what can you do to go back and like, hey, like let's just take a TV timeout. Let's talk about you. What are you up to? Like, what do you do outside of school or whatever? Like, you want to go for a run or something like that. How are you going to connect? But also modeling how to do this as a balance your personal and professional life as well. Okay, we have a video that we will watch, and I believe I need you to click on that.
Well, probably the primary concern of most new teachers, which is not going to be surprising to anyone, is classroom management. Excellent classroom management is often invisible, so it's hard for brand new teachers to really even understand that that's a part of what you have to think through as a teacher. So one of the things that you can do as a mentor teacher to help new teachers that are struggling or concerned with classroom management is really talk and think it out loud and try to make the things that you do naturally and normally, because you've done it all these years. Try to explicitly name those things and bring it to the attention of the new teacher. And that will help them feel a little bit more comfortable, I think, with classroom management and tackling classroom management. Another really big new teachers is reaching every learner. Sometimes they often enter the classroom naive about the variation in learner background. They also might not automatically be able to relate to every single learner. So they may know that it's critical for them to develop relationships with every learner, but they're not exactly sure how. So that can be a concern that they're not expecting, but then it kind of shows up when they're in the reality of the moment and they're faced with a number of different learners and they need to get to know each one of these individual learners individually while thinking and planning for them collectively. That's a tough thing to do for a new teacher. I think one last common concern for new teachers is something that we probably don't think about too much, and they probably don't think about until they get into the teaching context. But that's sort of understanding and navigating the micropolitics of teaching. There's so much more than to teaching and being a successful teacher than just what you do with children in the classroom. Understanding the leadership style of the principal. understanding the dynamics between different teams in a grade level, understanding the district and the district's policies, and even understanding state policies and federal policies and how those policies are affecting what you are doing in the classroom as a teacher. That's often something, again, they might enter the classroom as a novice. That's something that they'll be concerned about, but pretty soon as they observe the life around them in schools, they'll become to realize that navigating the micropolitics is a pretty important thing to do as a teacher, and also understanding them as well. So they may need some help understanding and making sense of some of the actions that they see around them, not necessarily by the students, but by other adults in the building as well.
Okay, so in your packet, there's a form, has 2 columns in it. So take a couple minutes in there, and from what you heard in that video, what are 3 concerns that she mentioned, or that you can come up with on your own, that relate to like teacher identity, or the concerns you have for beginning teachers? Is it them becoming jaded when they learn about the school politics, right? Or like the biggest, one of my like things that makes me cringe is when I hear the district. We are all the district, right? We all are here to support the goals of our district, but like for me as a person who worked out of this building, whenever I was like, like the district says I have to do this. I didn't say that. Who's that? So that was one thing that kind of would make me grit my teeth. In your experience, are there additional things or concerns or things that you feel like teacher candidates should know that she didn't mention? Who are the people that teacher candidates really need to get to know? Like for me, I was always taught you need to know the office manager or head secretary, and you need to know the custodian like really good, right? Because they are the people that will hook you up. And they know the building more than anyone else, right? So what are some things that she didn't mention you can think of? I'll give you like 2.5 minutes to kind of work through that worksheet. All right. So moving on. Culturally relevant classrooms. Huge topic, right? Especially, do we have folks from outside of Hillsborough here? I think I saw on our list. We have, yeah.
We got a new Bergian over here.
Awesome.
Wow.
Is that a real term? Bergian? Is that right. Okay, awesome. I know for us in Hillsborough, and I think this is true for most of the surrounding area around here, our classrooms are becoming more and more and more diverse, right? So what are the steps that we're taking to meet that diversity and to celebrate that and make sure that the students in our classrooms feel successful and feel like they have opportunities to meet the goals that they have for themselves and maybe excel? So this presentation has 3 different categories of culturally relevant classroom. In your packet, there are several pages of lists of different ideas about what culturally relevant practices look like. There are a plethora of books on the market about this as well. If you need ideas, I can list you a few. But so what we're focusing on here in the packet are environment. How does your environment support a culturally relevant classroom? What are some things, people in this room, what are things you do to try to make sure that the environment of your classroom is culturally relevant or culturally responsive?
I think we do morning meetings to kick off our day, and it's the time for like kids to be greeted in the morning. If they woke up on their own side of bed, or even sharing like simple things of like what did you do this weekend, or where are you? And it's a good sense of like where a lot of the kids are in their chance to speak.
So not to put you on the spot, but also put you right on the spot. How does that make your classroom culturally relevant?
Everybody is welcome. Everybody has their own voice, and they when they're speaking, they feel respected because they are the fans are listening to them.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Absolutely.
The one thing that stands out to me that I keep coming back to for our classes is being seen. And I feel like maybe that doesn't point directly to the cultural part, but I feel like you hit a lot of areas with just in your classes allowing your students to be seen, allowing yourself to be seen as a teacher. I feel like that's one area where I've really been trying to focus, at least in my practice, and help my teacher candidates to see that's important.
Yeah. Right on.
Another is that the students see themselves in the room. So posters on the wall or books that might be in the class library or on the bookshelf, that they see their own face, they see the color of their own skin, they see their own culture represented.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are huge. How about on the topic we're going to...
I was just going to add, these are terrific examples, and you know your teacher candidates, they hear about it in the classroom, they read about it in a book. So that's totally different than getting to actually experience it now in your classroom. And so being able to make those connections to them and explain to them, now here's why we do this, and this is like, oh yeah, I read about that in this book, or oh yeah, one of my professors talked about that. But now they get to actually connect the practice with the theory. And so that's a key part of what you get to do, is make that connection for them. Just like with your own students, making that connections for them in your room. Well, the same for your teacher candidate, making the connection from what they've been hearing throughout their courses, and now putting it into practice for them and giving them real live examples of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like, for me, as a mentor, this culturally relevant teaching was something that was important to me. Equity, restorative practices, and that is, I mean, all that is still huge for me. But like, I remember there's a gentleman that I follow, his name is Christopher Emden, and if you've never seen him, he's a teacher from Columbia University. And he talks about reality pedagogy, and he has 5 C's, and I'm not going to go all through them right now, but he has 5 C's that he has put together to create reality pedagogy. And so I thought, like, my understanding when I first was introduced to him, like, I was like, yes, this totally speaks to me. I love this. I'm taking this, and I'm going to, like, just spread this out to everyone. And I tried a little activity with my new teachers one year when we were in our PLC, and it bombed something fierce, because my experiences or my understanding of what he was spitting out was not their understanding or their experiences, and I didn't do a great job of trying to connect those two. I was like, this is awesome, right? And I was enthusiastic, and I thought that's going to transfer. And they were like, I can't do that. Like, how am I going to teach my math kids how to rap about? I'm not a rapper. I don't know anything about rap or hip hop pedagogy. Nope, can't do that, right? So I was like, okay. And, so how are we making, taking what our students or teacher candidates are talking about and reading about in a classroom, but they don't have necessarily the experience of trying to take that and implement it into a lesson, and then impart that in making an equitable classroom, right? So that all students feel empowered to learn and share and grow and take risk, right? So, good point, thank you. Okay, student interaction. How do we, so we had the example that we heard of class meetings could also be an example of student interaction. Are there any, what else are we doing in our classrooms?
Opportunities for group processing.
Can you say collaborative?
Opportunities for group processing,
Oh.
so letting them have a chance to talk.
Yeah.
Because in most cultures, we
Mhm.
talk to each other before we do anything.
Yeah.
And so why not give them the opportunity? In my classroom, we have flexible seating, so they can sit wherever they want, whenever they want. They have a variety of things they can do. And so depending upon where they there's limited times when they're not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And so they know they can jump up because they just saw something that made them think of this friend over there, and they run around the room and they quickly talk about it and come right back in and focus.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Any other ideas of how we're creating opportunities for the student interaction?
Teaching curriculum, so the kids can talk about things that they see themselves as needing to know, but not knowing how they were supposed to know it.
Mhm.
And that can not only be academically or as far as behaviorally or culturally as far as ethnicity, but also it spreads across all sorts of things. So we can also expand it to worldly and what do other cultures do regarding that in other countries. But a lot of the times they don't have a clue that what they're doing is maybe not necessarily appropriate.
Right.
And so teaching the hidden things that they may have missed at some point in their educational lifespan seems to help them grow as a community as well.
Yeah.
Academic discourse between other peers.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we do a lot of work around growth mindset
Mhm.
and, an open mindset versus a closed or fixed mindset, as well as collaboration between students, and promoting collaborative problem solving and giving kids tools to solve their own problems.
Two of my favorites were always Socratic seminar. Loved doing Socratic seminar, allowing kids to just sit in groups and like throwing out maybe some prompts for them and letting them run wild and see where that goes, and hearing the different perspectives and how they validate their own perspective or argue someone else's perspective in a respectful way. The other thing, like flipped classroom a little bit, would allow kids to have that power of teaching, right? Let them come up and be that expert and earn that street cred maybe from their peers by teaching a lesson. And especially I loved it when the students who were kind of seeming like, I don't know if you belong in this class, you're not holding your own. But really, they're sharp as a tack. They just needed a different way to show that, right? All right, instruction. So that last one was kind of instruction-wise, but what are some strategies you use? Groupings. Yep. Okay. You have a whole list, and that's not comprehensive, but it does have a lot of good strategies in there. I think the key thing to think about when you are, and we kind of touched on this, when you are doing things in your class, right? And if your teacher candidate asks, "Oh, that was pretty sweet. Why'd you do that?" Or they're like, "How'd you think of that?" And you're like, I don't know. It just kind of came to me. I don't know. So like that, when we're looking at this window and the teacher thinking, this would be like how you're able to take whatever you're doing as a leader in that classroom and someone who's trying to mentor someone else coming up into the profession. How do you explain why you're doing what you're doing? If you don't know why you did what you did and it didn't go well, you obviously couldn't do it, then that topic, that activity is a mystery, right? And that cooperating teacher is like, I don't know, it kind of looked cool, but maybe that didn't go right, I don't know. If you know what the activity, like you know how to talk about it, but not really necessarily how to teach it, right? So I think that was my problem. My first time I tried to teach Christopher Emden's amazing stuff. I knew it, I just wasn't sure how to teach it, so I'm really just teaching like the theory of it, right? And then go get interested on your own and good luck out there. Don't hurt anyone, please. If I can do it, but I can teach it, but I don't know how to explain that, then for the teacher candidate, then that's kind of a magical thing. Like, man, that kid's just born with that ability to be amazing, right? And I get that a lot, but that's not true. I work really hard at being amazing, okay? So then if we can do it, we know how we did it, we planned it, it was intentional, and we know how to tell that person how we did that. We can debrief and talk about it till we're blue in the face, and they're tired of hearing our voice. Then that is intentional. Which category do you think we want to be in most of the time? Intentional, right? So the more intentional we can be in our practice and in our discussions with that teacher candidate, the better off they're going to be when they are imparting knowledge on young minds, right? And shaping our youth into being responsible, productive members of society.
Hey, you guys, can we try not to talk while people are presenting? We're teachers, we know better. Okay, thank you. Sorry, it's one of my pet peeves when people have to talk over other people talking in the audience, like in our classroom.
That's all good. I didn't even notice. Usually my ADD kicks in, and I'm like, what are they talking about?
I can hear them.
That's usually
And then it distracts me from hearing you.
all good. Okay. So again, we want to take our practice and that work we're doing with a teacher candidate and take it from it being mysterious or theoretical or even magical. Like, that's awesome. How do I do that? To intentional, right? How do we get them there? What are the conversations that we have with those folks on a daily basis so that they're not just left in awe? Like, awesome, you have that one little magic nugget that's just for you. Like, okay, keep that in your pocket. But for most of the stuff, we want to share that out and spread the awesomeness, right? Shouldn't everybody be awesome? It's teaching, I hope, right? That's all I have to say about that. I believe that brings me to the end. And I believe we're taking a break now, right?
Yep.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
10-minute break?
Yeah.
Well, make sure and thank Susie for the nice snacks back there.
We're very welcome. What I could do for this.
Oh. Well, Jeremy was talking a little bit about being very intentional and deliberate in what we're doing, and I forgot the clicker, that little thing. There it is. Okay. So, what are some strategies to be able to do that? And that would be the very next sheet that you have there. Slide. I think that's the back-to-back.
Our packet can't line up with your.
Okay. It's on page, I think, 20?
Am I the only one?
Page 20 and 20, yeah, it may not be in the right order there. Page 20 and 21. And again, this comes from a practical guide for learning focused relationships. And it's talking about the 3 C's. And there's other models out there. If you are familiar with Danielson model, they use the 4 C's. But again, it's operating in different stances, or sometimes you're going to wear. Some people might even refer to it as wearing different hats. All right? And so there are going to be times, especially as your teacher candidate is just beginning, and you're probably experiencing this, where you're going to do a lot of consulting. You're going to be telling them, this is our schedule. This is how, this is our district required curriculum. And this is how we're supposed to do it. This is a pacing guide of what we need to follow. All right. Here are the children that are on IEPs. All right? So those type of conversations. And then sometimes you're going to be operating in being more of a collaborator. Okay, tell me what you've learned about in your classes, and then let me tell you how we're applying that here in the classroom. All right? Oh, okay. Okay, so, or you might talk about something and say, oh yeah, we talked about that in my classroom management course. All right, and so it's more of a collaboration. Or it might even be, as they get more comfortable in your room and they're learning the processes in your room, it might even be kind of like what I did to Jeremy a little bit ago. While he was talking about something, I kind of jumped up and said, and added to the conversation. Okay, so we were teaching collaboratively. All right? And that's where we really hope to see a lot of what's going on in the classroom, is that it's kind of that team teaching approach or co-teaching model. Right, where you're both working and both of you are seen as a teacher. The children in your class can go to either one of you and ask for help, or they feel comfortable doing that. And so it's a real collaborator type role there. And then afterwards, when you're talking about the particular lesson and what happened, and you ask them a question about, well, how did it go? How do you think how it went today? And they can be real open and honest with you and talk about, well, I think I did this and this really well. And then you were taking some notes, and it's like you had down some things to work on, and lo and behold, they bring up those exact same things that you had noticed that we need to have a conversation about this. All right? And so then you get to experience when they're seen and they've had more opportunities to get to know you, the classroom, and the routines, and you begin to step into more of a coaching role. And almost more of an encourager and a cheerleader, and say, yeah, go for it. You're doing great. You can do this. You've shown that you already were able to do it in this instance. This is very similar. You can do it here as well. All right? And so you turn into more of that coaching role, and just allowing them and giving them that encouragement to be able to continue and do what they've already shown, and maybe stretch them just a little bit farther than what they were willing to do, but now with your encouragement they can step into that. All right? Sometimes as a coach too, you also might hold the reins just a little bit and say, okay, but here's what we might want to do next time a little bit more. They did a great job in this and this, but it's like, okay, I need to pull you back just a little bit. And that's what the other sheet, I was already covering the next sheet as well, of what those things look like. All right, what it might look like in the classroom. And we're going to take a look at a video here. I should have pushed. Do I need to push this? There we go. And he's going to share just a little bit in a different way. So sometimes when we hear it, somebody else explain it. It's like, oh, okay, that's what he was trying to say. And this is another way of looking at the 3 C's.
These ideas of, as a mentor, having rules and stances. I always say in many cases it's just a formalized language around the work that you've been doing instinctively, perhaps without labeling it. It's not better to be a coach than it is to be a consultant, or it's not like, in September when I first meet the teacher candidate, I will be a consultant. By October the 10th, I'll be collaborating. Week 2 of the block, I'll be coaching, right? You really might be navigating all the way back and forth with the person. So Jerome is stuck on something. He doesn't know how to spell a word. I can be a consultant, to your point. I can say, because, B-E-C-A-U-S-E. It's fast. It gets Jerome the answer. I can get on with my life. But what's the danger if I only ever give Jerome the answer as a consultant? So Jerome learns, when I'm stuck on a word, ask Mr. S, he'll give me the answer. So maybe I need to look for authentic opportunities to collaborate with Jerome. Because, why don't we look at our spelling strategies chart? What are some things we could try? I could write it out 3 ways. I could do spell check. We have dictionaries. Great, go ahead, Jerome, giddy up. He actually would giddy up, by the way. That's a whole other story. Of course he could. But ultimately, perhaps over time, my goal with Jerome is to be a coach. Mr. S, I'm stuck on because. Well, Jerome, you're a pretty smart guy. You know lots of strategies. What are you thinking of trying? And then maybe over time, he's stuck on a word and he doesn't need.
Kind of like the video. It's kind of stuck. We have a little trouble with the feed.
Must be, because this line's still going.
If there's that readiness. Because if you try to coach somebody who isn't ready,
Good talk. Well, we didn't want to hear what you had to say anyway.
Just coach somebody.
Yeah, all right. Well, what I'd like you to do now, improvise here. What I'd like you to do now is you had an example there. I gave a few examples. We heard some of what he had to say. What I'd like you to do right now is maybe have a conversation with your table group and try and give an example of maybe even with your candidate, you don't have to use their name, but maybe with your candidate that you have right now, of a time when, oh, okay, I think I was a coach when I did this. Or here was an example of when I was a collaborator. Or here was an example when I was consulting with my candidate. And give each other kind of examples so that it's like, oh, okay, I need to be going back and forth between those different things. All right? Go ahead and do that for 2 minutes, please. All right, who would like to be the one person to share something in that consultant phase? Or at first C. Would somebody like to share an example that they have experienced? Or that, oh, you're getting voluntold. All right, so could you share one with us? Wendy.
Well, I am a speech language pathologist, and so I started in the role of consultant with my teacher candidate, and we were listening to the F sound from a little girl in kindergarten who couldn't say the F sound. So I kind of showed how the lesson would go and got her to the stage where she was saying the F at the beginning of the words, saying F words, I like to say. And then the next time I'm like, okay, so you saw what I did, are you ready to do it? And she's like, yes, I am. But she didn't quite, she was struggling, and at the end she's like, I just can't get her to do it. And I realized I'd kind of jumped over the collaborator phase from consultant to coach a little too fast, and that I probably needed to spend a little more time doing it with her, because you feel like, oh, you show them and they got it, but not necessarily, and we needed more review time.
You gave us examples of all three right there.
Yeah,
Did you guys catch that? Yeah, nice job. Nice job. Well, it's a hard act to follow, but would somebody like to share? One more person, maybe one of the C's, something that you heard or experienced yourself? Okay, here we go.
Sure. So my student, sorry, what do you call it? Student candidate. Sorry, so he's to the student teacher term. Okay, so
I still do too.
my student candidate is with me just once a week for now, and then he'll be at our school more in a later term this year. And so the other day he saw me roll out a lesson first period, but we were finishing part of a lesson from the previous day and then rolling out a new lesson for the current day. And I did it one way, but then I wasn't really happy with it. So then when my next class was about to come in for second period, I said, so how do you think that went? And kind of got his feedback, and I said, I'm thinking about switching the order. What do you think? And just kind of, so I had him kind of collaborate with me and just kind of make sure that he understood why I thought I needed to change things from one period to the next. And so then I did, and then I was like, so what did you think? Did things make sense better that way? Did it flow better? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, so I think I'm going to do it the second way the rest of the day. And he was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. It went better that way.
So you intentionally, you probably already knew what you were going to do, but you intentionally, maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but you probably already had an idea of what you were going to do, but you intentionally brought him in and collaborated so that his learning was increased through that process as well. And he got to kind of see that thought process, that reflection brought into changing your practice. Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great example of that. Thank you. So with that, I'm going to hand the baton I actually did already hand the baton off to Jeremy there. And he's going to talk a little bit about what would some of those conversations look like as you're traveling back and forth between these different C's. What might those conversations look like? So Jeremy, here you go.
So I'm actually going to try to talk as little as possible here and give you guys as much time to talk. But I know for me as a mentor, we talked about this a lot, right? We didn't necessarily talk about these 3 C's, but it was kind of the same thing. You have to kind of navigate from where you're going to be, instructional with your code, with your, like for me, my mentee. Are you going to be collaborative, or are you just going to jump in and be direct and tell them what they need to fix because what they were doing was not working? And it's a fine line. So we heard that, right? We heard someone say well, I kind of think I jumped into this hat a little too soon and needed to back out because it could have gone wrong. And being able to know exactly where to address a teacher candidate takes a lot of finesse, and that trust is important here, right? Like I had a teacher once, I had worked with her for an entire year, and then I came into her class one time and noticed something, and I kind of asked a question. It wasn't really like attacking, I was just asked a simple question, like, did you notice this? But it was a topic that was kind of like a high stakes topic, and she felt a little attacked, I think. And she shut down and was like, whoa. And I think she maybe thought I was attacking her teaching, which I absolutely was not. I was just trying to get us to reflect on what happened and how we could go a different route. And so even though I thought we had a very high level of trust, bringing up the topic, and I don't want to tell you what it is because it's actually one of your scenarios. So I don't want to give away any like clues for your conversation. But coming at her, she was like, no, shut down. But then for like the last 3 or 4 weeks of school, wouldn't return my phone calls, wouldn't return my emails, like she wanted nothing to do with this guy. But then I saw her the following year at an in-service somewhere, and we were able to talk about it and get in a better place. And so, but that was really hard for me as her mentor, like thinking that she wanted nothing to do with me because she felt like I was attacking her, and that was not it at all. So being able to navigate through those different categories, and in your packet you have the frames that are available. How are you going to use those? We're going to give you some time right now. You have 6 scenarios in your packet, and these are set up for AV partners for you to go back and forth. But if you want to do it in a triad or with 4 people, knock yourself out. That's fine. But practice using the frames, or practice, really think about how you would approach that with a student teacher, or teacher candidate. Man. And whoever is the candidate, put yourself in those shoes, really try to play it up, right? And see how that feels, coming from the other side of the table. All right, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, or cash you want to throw my way?
We're teachers, there's no cash.
Yeah. All right, so none. I don't want to hear any complaining or anything like that either. So we're going to give you, we'll see how this goes. I think we have scheduled about 20 minutes, 18 to 20 minutes for you to run through the scenarios. Feel it out, see how it goes. And if you get done hyper quick, then we can cut it short. All right?
So how many of you in reading over the scenarios is like, oh, that was my today? Yeah? No, maybe? You found some similarities of what's going on with your teacher candidate, or some things that it's like, okay, that applies. Or maybe, how did they find out about my last year's candidate? And so you found some scenarios there that maybe were familiar or similar to what you're experiencing or have experienced. And that's what we're hoping to do, is for you to go back, and again, we know that reflection is a key part of this job we call teaching, of our profession. And so that's what we want to do today, is give you opportunities to reflect upon what you're now doing as a mentor teacher. And that's a big task. So how many of you have been part of conversations, maybe even an observation you experienced yourself, and you had great dialogue about the lesson and things that you did well, and things that, okay, I could work on this, or I need to do some more work on that, and you had that conversation and you left the room and you got involved with the rest of the day, or what you need to do for tomorrow, and those conversations of what I need to think about and do are quickly forgotten in the busyness of all the things that are expected of teachers. Well, that's why we included this in here, because that is especially true for our teacher candidates. So I'm not sure which, that's 17 up there. 25, thank you. So page 25 is a template for capturing and then following through with those conversations. And so a place for, and actually, sometimes it's really helpful to actually have the candidate be the one filling this out and taking ownership of it. And so allowing them to kind of capture, what are you hearing? And so they can write down, after you're in your conversation, write down what you both agree is like, you did a really great job with that. You're right. That was a stellar moment right there. Capture that, do it again. Right? You did a great job with that. And then, what are the things we need to work on? What's some stuff here that, again, separating the person from the practice. Let's make sure that we're not taking this as a threat. But what are those things that, practice-wise, we can improve on? Let's talk about that. All right. And so, what is it that we're going to try and improve? And we know that this profession of teaching, we never master. We can always improve. Right? We never are perfect. And so there's always things, and I think it's okay to admit that to your candidate as well, and probably you already have. There are things that we're all still trying to get better at. And so what are those things that we can improve on? Now, I will say this. There's probably, oftentimes there's more that you could list than there's space on a page for. So maybe think of 2 or 3 at the most. What were the key things? And they may get one of the 3 that you're thinking of, and sometimes just one is enough when it's something that's glaring or it's a biggie. You got to get that in place before these other things are going to be able to happen. So get that down. And then talk about, okay, so we've talked about what it is that we need to work on, what you've done well. What are your next steps? What are you going to do before you get out there and teach again? What are you going to think about tonight? What are you going to look at before you come in tomorrow? All right. And then talk about, what do you need from me? What can I provide for you? What would you like to see? And, maybe it might be observing you do what you just asked them to do. Well, can I see that again? I still don't have down how you're able to put these kids into groups or how you're able to draw those questions out of them that you do. How is it that you're able to know so much about your students already and make those connections? And so sometimes it might be things that you need to do, or maybe it might even be copying off something for them to go and read about, an article that talks about culturally relevant practices. Not maybe the whole thing, but a page or 2 that just really spoke to you and applied to your particular classroom. And share that. Get that for you. I'm going to provide that for you. I'm going to send it to you in an email today, and so you'll see that tonight. Maybe get a chance to read those 2 pages before you come in tomorrow. Right, so what is it that you're going to do as well? Hillsborough School District, what evaluation tool, I think Jeremy told me this and I've forgotten.
5Ds.
The 5Ds, okay. If you look down here, I think that you'll probably find, okay, and again, it breaks it into kind of 4 different domains because it doesn't actually come out and say it, but this matches very closely aligned to Danielson. But I think you'll see also, even within your own school district, some areas that it's like, okay, that really aligns to what I'm being evaluated on as a teacher and what you need to be thinking about as you head into this profession. And so, especially if you're talking about a particular lesson, you might highlight those areas that you talked about up there that they did really well in with a yellow marker. You did this really well. You didn't even talk about this one, and you rocked it on that one. And then but then you also then might say, okay, our focus area is going to be this one. You might use a different color marker or circle it and say, this is the one we're going to work on here. And it actually fits into that evaluation rubric of the lesson I'm going to be observing and evaluating you on here. Listen. All right, so again, this is a form. Is our contact information in that packet? If you would like this in a fillable format, you can send me an email. George Fox, well, actually, it's not on there. Okay.
I'm planning on sending out for a participant packet to everyone.
Oh, that's right. You're going to send out a follow-up, and you've got it as well, because we've been talking about this, and Tanya shared it with us in a fillable format from ODE mentoring program. Anyways, and so if you are a person that it's much easier for you to type than it is to write, we have it in a fillable format as well, so you can actually type that up and kind of keep documenting that. And so this, I have found that this is really helpful in those conversations, especially in the follow-through part of it, for me and the candidate. And we actually are asking our TEAs to be trying to implement and use this as well. Especially if it seems as though they're just not catching it, and just not following through. We want to give them one more way to reflect upon what they need to be trying to do.
So just to add a little bit
Yeah.
for me, Steve, as someone coming from the mentor program, who used that, used to be from Center for Educational Lead, anyway, I can't remember. But ODE adopted it. We had to use them as part of our requirement for our grant, the mentor program. And for me, as a person, I just like to flow and talk, right? And I found this to be a little clunky. But what Steve just said, that part of like accountability and getting things planned out so that if we know what we're doing, it is awesome. We had to do like 4 a year in the mentor program. And for my ADD and taking notes and stuff, it was a little hard, but super valuable. Absolutely.
And speaking of valuable, thank you, that was a great transition. And for some, what we'd like for you to do, Susan's going to talk about, before we wrap it up here, a little piece that we'd like for you to do.
All right, I want to end by thanking everybody for coming out this afternoon. I know it's hard to attend a training after you've taught all day. And I want to thank Steve and Donna and Jeremy for presenting for us today, and Kate for videotaping. And on your very last page is our mentor orientation feedback. As I said, this is the first year that we've actually put together this orientation, so any feedback you can give us that we can improve and make it valuable to you as a cooperating teacher. So if you take a couple minutes to do that, and then we will be done.
And Kate, did you have a few words that you wanted to say as well, or you were able to fit it in there?
Yeah, I think we're good. Just feel free to stop by and say hi, or if you have any questions for me, feel free.
All right. And thank you, everyone.